All right, so now we're going to talk about the hypothalamus and the pituitary. We've got about 4 different objectives that we're trying to get through in these next couple of slides. They're very interrelated. It's fairly simple, but let's go through it. So when you think of the hypothalamus, think about just think of it as the place where homeostasis is controlled or regulated. Okay, and it does this by regulating 3 main things. It does other things, but these are the 3: blood pressure, temperature, and water balance. And if you think about it, blood pressure and water balance are very related. We'll talk about blood pressure in the cardiovascular unit, but just think about a water balloon. Okay, there's one of the ways that we can increase pressure in a water balloon is by adding water. Okay, and so the more water that's inside that balloon, the more pressure. And the same is true with your body. The more blood volume you have, or the more fluid in your bloodstream, the greater the pressure. Okay, and so the hypothalamus regulates this by producing and ultimately releasing hormones to try and maintain homeostasis, especially with these three variables. All right, and like I said, we'll talk about blood pressure and water balance. We won't talk about temperature in this class, regulation of temperature, but we do in PE 381. So when it comes to hormones, there are a couple of types. So we've got what are called tropic hormones. And really, you've got tropic hormones, and then you've got hormones that aren't tropic hormones. And so hormones that are considered tropic hormones, their job or their target is a specific endocrine gland. So it's a hormone that's going to cause the release of another hormone. Or it's actually, if it does cause the release of another hormone, we call it a releasing hormone. But if it inhibits the release of another hormone, we call it inhibiting hormone. Okay, most of the ones, if not all, that we're talking about this semester are releasing hormones. Okay, so like I mentioned in the previous video, you've got basically to release thyroid hormone, you've got thyroid stimulating hormone, which causes the release of thyroid releasing hormone, which causes the release of thyroid hormone. Okay, so it's actually kind of a 2-step process as opposed to a 1-step. All right, now there is a hormone that I don't think we're actually going to talk about this semester, but it's involved with the reproductive system. It's called inhibin, and inhibin targets the pituitary to prevent the release of some of the reproductive hormones. Now, with the hypothalamus, it has a really unique and interesting relationship with the pituitary. If you recall from anatomy, at least I'm assuming you talked about this in anatomy, the hypothalamus has 2 parts, an anterior and a posterior. And the relationship that the hypothalamus has with each of these areas is very different. So the hypothalamus can release hormones that will stimulate the anterior pituitary to release hormones produced by the anterior pituitary. And there's actually 6 of them. Okay, and so the ones on the on the left, these are released by the anterior pituitary, and the ones on the right are released by the hypothalamus. So we'll just put HYP there for hypothalamus. So dopamine causes the release of prolactin. Growth hormone releasing hormone causes the release of growth hormone. Thyroid releasing hormone causes the release of thyroid stimulating. Corticotropin releasing hormone causes the release of ACTH. Gonadotropin releasing hormone causes the release of both luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. And on Thursday in class, we're going to do some worksheets and stuff. I know it's everybody's favorite thing, but to help us better understand not only these hormones, but several others. Okay. And with these hormones, there's really, I think, 4 things that we're looking for. 1, what stimulates the release of each of these hormones? So prolactin is stimulated by the release of dopamine. Where are these hormones produced? So in this case, prolactin would be released by the anterior pituitary. What do they target, and what's the effect? And so we'll get into that later on, but it's something to look forward to. And then, unlike the anterior pituitary, the posterior pituitary doesn't actually produce its own hormones. Okay, and instead, it's a storage site. And so everything that the posterior pituitary stores is actually produced by the hypothalamus. And so there's 2 hormones, vasopressin and oxytocin. And again, we'll talk about their functions later. But I also want to make clear, as you read, you might see something called ADH. Okay, and ADH and vasopressin are the same thing. ADH just stands for anti-diuretic hormone. Okay, and so Like I said, on Thursday in class, we'll discuss their functions. That's actually what your EB is about. And there will be a PowerPoint that's printed. I'm not making a video for it because it's just really dry and you can read as well as I can just read the slides in that case. So that's where we're going to end for this video.